It's been a rough 3 months of non-stop boat projects at Cabrales Boatyard in Mexico. Our bulkhead, rudder, and keel repairs were finished and our bottom job was complete. But with only 1 week left until our splash date and a couple more projects to complete, the clock was ticking and we were feeling the pressure. We were certainly ready to get back to sailing, and this was the final push to make it happen. Here it goes. There's nothing more satisfying than ripping the tape off a fresh paint job. One Life's bottom job was officially complete. Okay, well, we ripped the tape off of the bottom this morning and the boot stripe looks pretty good. There's a couple areas I need to touch up, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out and it looks much better than it did when we first got into the yard. So just trying to finish up all the things that are related to One Life's bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and change our zincs. Gary is upstairs trying to figure out what all we need to do with the rudder. Ta-da! They're all done. Fresh new zincs. What do you have there?
This is our generator exhaust hose. I just pulled out the last section of our engine exhaust hose as well. And I noticed there was some rust on this hose, which likely means it had some pinhole leaks. And when I pulled it off, it pretty much just fell apart. So definitely a good idea to replace this last section of generator exhaust hose. And the reason I'm pulling all of this apart is that to fit the new autopilot drive and the new tiller arm, I need to reroute and move the way that these exhaust hoses are routed back to the transom. This piece of engine hose, exhaust hose, and on the bottom here, where it was resting on the hull, there's definitely some chafing where, in fact, you can see the reinforcement wire poking through in a few spots. And that's just from this over time, just rubbing back and forth on the bottom. Definitely time to replace this.
Always an interesting day here in the boatyard in Mexico. We just got a call that there is a boat on fire at the marina in the harbor here. And I came up to look and you can see all of the smoke. It looks pretty bad. Wow, I sure hope everyone's okay. And I hope all the other boats around it are okay. It's really sad.
I looked down at my phone and saw a message from the yard manager here that there was a boat on fire, and Brooke called me up, and sure enough, there's a shrimp boat that's on fire just next door in the yard next door. And that's a pretty sobering reminder of how quickly problems and things can go up in flames on a boat. Literally, it's really scary. Hopefully everyone over there is safe. It looks like the firefighters are putting out the fire and it looks like it's under control, but that's scary and hopefully no one was injured. Yeah, makes me really think twice as I'm doing our exhaust installation here, because if you do something wrong here, fire can happen. So it needs to be 100% correct. The other big reason that I need to do this is because this is our new tiller arm for our new autopilot. And it is much beefier than our old one. And this is going to mount right about in here. And it needs to be able to swing like this. Well, our engine exhaust hose was routed right about here, which is right in the way of that tiller arm. The old tiller arm's much smaller and it cleared it, but this one was right in the way. And this flat exhaust hose is really not flexible at all. That's as much as I can bend it, pulling on it. So what I've got is some of this Vetus exhaust hose, and this stuff is way more flexible. So I'm going to be able to route this out and around where the tiller arm needs to swing. Our engine exhaust is 3-inch inside diameter, so it's pretty heavy stuff to work with. And our generator exhaust is 2-inch, a little smaller, a little more flexible. In case I need to do any sharper bends than I can make with this new exhaust hose, I got a couple 45-degree fiberglass connectors, and hopefully I can figure out a way to reroute this and keep it clear and out of the way. So today I'm going to work on getting our rudder up into position, and to do that I need to repack the nut with the seals in it. I already cut these rings. I'm going to use some Syntef lubricant, which is a Teflon lubricant, and put that on these rings, and then I'm going to put 3 rings back into this nut. I think it would probably work fine with 1 ring, but there was 3 in there. It didn't leak, so I'm going to put it back how it was. I won't tighten this down until everything's all set, and then once we're back in the water, I'll need to check it and just make sure that it's tight enough not to be dripping. I'm going to stagger them at 1/3 apart so that the joints don't line up, and that should help it seal better. I don't know if you can see, if you look straight down it, but there's 1 cut here, 1 cut joint here, and 1 cut joint there. So I've already got the jam nut on because that goes on first. And then this nut with the packing goes on after. The question is it going to fit? Probably not. Oh no. It's not going to go over that. Okay, it's in place now. The packing rings were just a little too thick to get to slide over the shaft. So I just took a mallet, a soft mallet, and I hammered them a little thinner. And that shouldn't be any big deal. When that nut gets compressed down, they will expand back out and seal around the shaft. So I've borrowed a little jack, like an automotive jack, and we've got that set up under the rudder. And I'm going to be able to use that now to push the rudder by myself up into place. Our rudder's in place. We still need to get the strap bolted up down below and get all the steering put back together, but the rudder is in position, and that's huge. It's been a long time without a rudder.
But in typical boat project fashion, reinstalling the rudder and steering cables wasn't going to be as easy as we had hoped. There is always something that comes up, turning a couple-hour job into a couple days. So we're thinking we should have dry fit the rudder a little better and actually bolted it up into place before we painted it. Right by the skeg, it's so tight that we can't get the rudder up any further. So we basically have 2 options. We can, or 3, we can grind more off of the rudder, but we don't really want to do that because all the fiberglass we just laid, actually it really needs to be there. We don't want to grind that down too far. And the other option is taking it off the skeg, which is this part here, but we're not sure how thick the fiberglass is there, and we don't want to grind off too much there either. So third option is there's a spacer between the steering quadrants and where it rests on the shaft. So Gary's looking to see if we can take that spacer out. The spacer is about 1/4 inch, which would be exactly what we would need for the clearance.
This is just a spacer that sits underneath the quadrant, and we can't get our set screws into the quadrant with this in place. It's about twice as thick as it needs to be now because we've built up some fiberglass here. So to have a gap here, we need to reduce this by about half, I think.
So how do we reduce that?
Either make a new one out of thinner material.
So we just kicked out the blocks from underneath the rudder. So the rudder is officially hung, and Gary is connecting the steering cables now. And then we'll see if we can turn it right to left, see what happens.
Right to left?
What? Right to left. Port to starboard. Is that better? Without the correct supplies to make a long-term solution, Gary made a temporary shim to keep the project moving. This allowed us to attach the cables to test the steering, but the rest would have to wait until we made one last trip across the border. We've been trying to get these bolts to go through for like an hour now. Still working on it. They're not lining up at all, so it's pretty frustrating. One would think that installing these bolts would be an easy job, but this is yet another example of a boat's ability to turn a 10-minute job into a couple hours. This morning we woke up bound to go to Phoenix to make one last run to the United States to pick up supplies, extra parts, some provisioning items, and we have a flat tire. It's always an adventure. So actually someone here in the yard has a compressor. We're on the road now. We wanted to leave by 8, it's 8:30, so that's pretty good. And we're looking to see where we can get the tire fixed now. We pulled over to the first tire shop we found. Gary is speaking his best Spanish to explain that we have a flat tire and we need a repair. So let's see how this goes.
Tengo un tornillo. Screw, tornillo.
We have a screw. There's the screw.
Bueno.
Bueno, no. In the United States, it is common to have to wait a couple hours for a tire repair. Not only do you have to wait, but it seems like they always try to upsell you as well. But here in Mexico, the process was fast, easy, and all done with a smile.
I asked the guy how much for the tire fix. He was really quick, and he wrote on the hood 130, so 130 pesos, which is only like $7, which didn't quite seem right. So I gave him 200 pesos and told him keep the change.
That's awesome. So now we're on our way.
Now we're on our way. Tire's fixed. Apparently on roads, there's actually speed limits. Things that you forget.
We're not having a good day, you guys. Oh, just what we need. Speeding ticket. Maybe he'll be nice to us.
I was doing 73 knots in a 60 knot.
Do you have a virtual court hearing?
I don't know. I don't care. Just take my money and let me leave. I'm trying to go south.
Being able to make a quick trip across the border and have everything we need at our fingertips was huge. This would be our final visit before we sailed off across the Pacific Ocean. We picked up some final packages, participated in some massive consumerism, spent the night, and with room still in the car, we grabbed a few provisions that we knew we couldn't find in Mexico and sent back across the border.
I am just about ready to fiberglass in the mounting platform for our new autopilot drive. I made this little box shaped to the hull contours out of 1-inch Baltic birch, the same wood that we used for our bulkhead because I had extra. And I went ahead and fiberglassed the inside. I tabbed the inside together just to give it a little more strength even. And this is going to sit in here on the hull side. And I'm going to fiberglass that into place. But I ran into one little problem, and that is this copper in here. So our SSB needs a counterpoise or a ground plane. And in our boat, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. But in our boat, what was done is sheets of copper were laminated into the hull back here. And as I went to mount this, I noticed that it was really thin lamination over the copper, and it wasn't all too smooth everywhere. So to deal with that, what I'm going to do, because this autopilot box needs to be mounted very rigidly, is I'm going to lay 1708 cloth, one layer of it, over the whole thing just to kind of reinforce that whole area and make sure that where that copper is laminated in is really solid and down. And then I'll get to work laminating this in. Okay, that first layer of 1708 went down, and that should give me a good, clean base to work with. I've removed the paint and ground down the whole area where I put that, so it should bond really well to the hull and the old lamination over the copper there. Now I'm going to mix up some thickened epoxy and put it all around where that platform that I built is going to sit on the hull surfaces. And that thickened epoxy will fill those gaps and make sure I get a nice solid bond to the hull. And I'll probably wait a little bit after that for that to set up and be a little bit rigid, so that way I can come in and fiberglass over the rest of it without worrying about it moving its position.
Hi guys, we are 4 days from splash, and this is what our boat looks like right now. Stuff everywhere. And let's see what Gary's doing back here. Good. That's our shower. It's filled with our cushions.
4 days?
4 days.
It's probably fine.
And our autopilot box is being fiberglassed in right now. And we're gonna pull an all-nighter. So what do you guys think? Are we gonna make our splash date? Hell yeah, we are. With Gary working on the last fiberglass project, I worked on inventorying every spare part in the boat. We've put in many long days here in the boatyard, and soon these late nights would all pay off.
Well, I may have slightly overdone that. I got at least 2 layers of 1708 on everything and a 3rd layer of tabbing in some spots. And then I ran out of resin and hardener, so I think that's a pretty clear sign that it's good enough. So we're going to let that sit overnight and cure, and then come back, sand it down just a little bit to knock away any of the sharp points that are left, and we'll be ready to mount the autopilot.
T-minus 3 days to splash?
I don't know. Depends on how you're counting.
Saturday, Sunday,
Today's
Monday.
Friday.
Oh, today's Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we have
2 minus 3.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we have most of Monday. So we kind of have...
3.5? 3.5?
Yeah. Maybe we should count on hours.
Maybe.
We have like 72 hours left.
72 hours to splash.
Okay. Let's get this autopilot done.
Ready?
No.
So I've been trying to put stuff away inside now for the past couple days, but whenever I put something away, it seems like Gary needs it again. So the process is going quite slow. I'm hoping to make some progress today, though. I mean, there's still tools and everything everywhere, and I need everything cleaned up so that I can do provisioning. Fastening these hoses would close up the final holes in the bottom of One Life. This means any other project not completed before we splash can be done once we are back on the water. This is such a huge accomplishment.
So I've secured the engine exhaust hose with a whole series of cable ties to keep it out of the way of the tiller arm, because the tiller arm is going to mount here and has to have room to swing. And I cut up some of the old exhaust hose that I took out and put that in place as chafe protection for anywhere it's hitting the fiberglass or the steering support here. And then our generator exhaust, I did the same thing. It's been reconnected, and I used a little bit of that old exhaust hose as chafe protection. I think that should keep those hoses from wearing through, like the old ones were almost all the way worn through and leaking. So should be all set. Just time to get the autopilot back together, the steering quadrant on, the cables connected, and then we'll be ready to splash. So the autopilot box is ready for the autopilot to be mounted on. But I need to get the tiller arm, this guy, drilled where the autopilot's going to connect to. There's these 5 holes that are pilot drilled, and they're basically at different lengths from the center, so you can choose which length you want depending on how far your autopilot drive extends and retracts. So we need to use the middle hole, which is 8 inches from the center, and we need to get it drilled for the pin to fit nice and tightly into. I could drill it with my hand drill, but it won't be super precise. So there's a machine shop nearby. I'm gonna head over there and see if I can get them to do this for me this afternoon. It's Friday afternoon, so I'm afraid if it doesn't get done today, I'll probably just have to drill it by hand and do it the best I can. Yeah, looks like they're closed.
Oh no. Well, they're closed. Looks like we have to find another machine shop. So I think the next one we have to drive there, right? It's too far a walk.
Yeah. See if anyone's home. ¿Cuántos?
50 pesos.
That was very fast and easy, and he nailed it. Which is great because we only have one of those tiller arms, so we cannot screw it up. Big D varnished our companionway hatch while we were gone, and he's also working on varnishing our cockpit table, which is awesome. These are projects that would not have got done before we splashed, so thanks, Big D. You're amazing. Now we have to do the limbo underneath here while it dries. Okay, let's see how it fits.
All right, well, I'm working on putting our steering cables back together and getting our steering all reconnected. So I went ahead and reattached the quadrant, and I had to make a new spacer that goes underneath the quadrant because our rudder ended up about an 1/8 inch lower than where it was previously. And the reason for that is we built up some fiberglass and we needed to have clearance here. And we built up about 1/8 of fiberglass probably, so the rudder needed to come down about 1/8 of an inch. which is all fine everywhere else, except there was a little shim underneath the quadrant that was a 1/4 inch shim, so I just had to make a new one out of 1/8 inch. I made it out of Delrin, and no big deal. I just used a couple hole saws, put on the same drill, and cut out a giant washer, basically all in one shot. Now I've got the wheel centered and locked, and I need to make sure that the rudder here is also centered. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Now that the rudder is centered, we can go back up and reconnect the steering cables with the wheel centered. And if everything's all centered when I put it all together, it should all match up. All right, I just sent Brooke up to the helm. She's gonna turn the rudder back and forth for me. What I need to do when I mount this is make sure that there's a little bit of stroke left in either end stop position, because you don't want this to be what stops the rudder at the end of its travel. You actually want the quadrant hitting this steel stop right here to be what stops it. So I'm gonna have Brooke go hard to port and hard to starboard and make sure with this where I have it that there's still a little bit of stroke left at the end of the cylinder.
Which way first?
It doesn't matter.
All right, port first. Ready?
Okay.
That's it. That's hard over.
Okay, 1 second.
As I turned the helm, Gary adjusted the autopilot placement. Once satisfied with the range of motion, he used a Sharpie to mark the position for the final installation. Trying to figure out how that thing comes off.
I'm making Brooke do this because she's got little arms, and I left a slot to reach in the back of this box so we can through bolt this ram in place, but I think it'll be easier for her with little hands.
We just turned the autopilot circuit on, and Gary has it all wired up. So we're gonna test this bad boy right here in the boatyard.
It's not much of a test, it's just to calibrate it, tell it where the rudder stops are, and then it will drive it just briefly to make sure that it works and it's turning in the right direction.
Moving now. Moving. Well, we weren't gonna do it, but our friends are going out to eat. Well, they've already left actually. And we were gonna work on the autopilot for the rest of the night, but since Gary is a wizard and got that thing installed pretty quickly, I'm gonna go meet them for burgers.
Pretty quickly? You mean 3 days?
3 days, but I mean tonight, or today's part, pretty quickly.
You mean 8 hours?
8 hours.
10 hours?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, let's just go eat burgers. We had a productive day. We celebrated our install with some burgers and a couple beers. It's been so nice having friends in the boatyard. Their smiles and support have kept us going when times have been tough.
So we've got about 48 hours, 2 days until we are due to splash. It is Saturday morning, and the lift is coming Monday morning to pick us up. And then we'll have a bit of work on Monday to sand and paint where the stands are and where our keel is blocked. and then we'll be going in the water. It happens real fast when it happens, so we're trying to do everything we can to get ready. But the projects are slowly getting checked off. They're getting checked off a lot quicker now than they were a few weeks ago. It seems like everything's starting to come together, but it's been a long 3 months here in the boatyard of working, and it's been almost 5 or 6 months since we've sailed and since One Life's been in the water. So we're pretty nervous about that. Splash day is really exciting, but it's also pretty nerve-wracking. And I think we'll be pretty happy if we get in the water and there's no major leaks and everything's good. We've got a slip reserved here in Puerto Penasco for a couple nights. So once the boat's in the water, we can relax and test all the systems that we've put in and make sure everything's good to go before we find a weather window to start sailing south. But we are pretty exhausted. This has been a grind. I'm sure in these videos, it seems like things happen really quickly because we cut down the timelines and we show a lot of things in time lapses, but it's been 12 plus hour days for months on end, and we're ready to reap some of the rewards of this work. This is probably the hardest period that we've gone through since we left to go sailing, and it hasn't even been sailing. You know, you would think that the tough times would be out on the water, far from land, in storms or whatever, but it turns out that's actually the easy, enjoyable part, and not sailing and having to do this long refit on the boat to get it ready to cross an ocean is the most trying time that we've been through. But we're almost there. The finish line is in sight, and I think we're going to make it. We'll be pretty stoked when we're floating again.
All right, you guys. We're tired of filming boat work. We're sure you're tired of seeing boat work. So we're just gonna do a crazy montage of all the last minute things we have to do before the boat gets in the water on Monday. Here we go.
So we have 36 hours left till launch, give or take. And we're going through everything in the boat and trying to organize and put everything away. We have way more spares than we've ever had before. And that's great because we're sailing to the Pacific Ocean, sailing across the Pacific Ocean. But we have nowhere to put everything. This pile of hose, tools, all of this stuff that needs to find a home. All of this needs to find a home.
There's stuff in
Yeah,
there.
there's stuff up there that needs to find a home. Right now, I'm saying goodbye to the full face mask.
Oh.
We had a lot of good times together, but I think it's time I pack it up and put it away until, hopefully, never again.
Till next haul out.
But seriously, this full face mask was a lifesaver for all of the grinding and fiberglass work that we did. Hopefully it kept us safe, and it definitely kept a lot of stuff out of my eyes.
Where are you gonna stick that?
It's a great question.
All right, well, it's 10 p.m. I think, and we're gonna go to dinner, and we're gonna go check out my favorite food truck stand, and it's not tacos. Although we love all the traditional Mexican food, Mexico does some all-American style food pretty fantastic too.
So how was that?
It was amazing. So
What was that?
that was a Sonoran hot dog at El Jefe. And a Sonoran hot dog is typically a hot dog wrapped in cheese, wrapped in a big chili, a chili pepper, wrapped in jamon or bacon, and then topped with, oh no, our light went out. And then topped with tomatoes, onions, cheese, a bunch of different sauces.
And then a bar of anything else you want to put on it.
Yeah.
So you can pretty much load it up with all of your own favorite
Yeah,
toppings.
so
it's so good.
It's so good. So you can put beans, nacho chili sauce.
Not something that Mexico is probably known for, but their hot dogs, they do it right.
They do it right, yeah. We had so many last-minute projects to wrap up, from a dinghy patch repair, to breaking down our work table, to finishing up the varnishing, cleaning, and just getting our boat ready to sail again. There were many moments when we didn't think we would get it all done, but with the help of our friends, we were able to finish it all with time to spare. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you later. This little town of Puerto Peñasco has been our home for the past few months, and it was bittersweet knowing our time here was coming to a close. So, how are you feeling about tomorrow?
Tomorrow is splash day, and we haven't actually seen the beach since we've been here for 3 months. So we decided we'd come take a look at where we're gonna head off to pretty soon. We're gonna go that way.
We're headed south.
But we're here at sunset, just having a drink, relaxing, taking a little break so we can get our minds cleared, because the next 24 hours will be a bit of a scramble.
Yeah, how are you feeling about it?
It's good, we're ready.
Yeah, I think we are.
Tomorrow's the big day, but we're ready.
Thanks for coming along on our boat refit with us. We are extremely excited to share this next chapter with everyone.